Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Tito Report. I'm Devon Decker, and I'm doing a funny voice. Joining me is Sejohn Sarowick.
Is it a choice? Yeah,
that was a
big
choice.
swigs, everybody. Big swigs over here in the Tito Report, apparently.
Well, you know,
I wasn't aware we were taking them, but here we are.
It's been a weird morning, and it's weird stuff that we're going to talk about. The first thing that we have to address before we go any further, though, is the title of this episode. Sejohn, I assume I always have a drink when we do the show. I assume you have a drink as well. Do you have something
like liquid libations? Yes,
just something made of something in the liquid form of matter.
Yeah. No, I suppose like alcoholic. Is what I'm saying.
No. I mean, we should have something alcoholic considering the title of the episode, but it's 9 a.m. for you, and I don't think you're a big Bloody Mary guy. So,
well, first of all, you know that's not true. Secondly, no, I know, but I have my coffee. Yes,
I actually feel like you're more of a Caesar guy. I don't think you call them Bloody Marys. I think you call them Caesars.
I'm more of a Bloody Maria guy.
Right.
No, we have a really good rotation in the house where I'm a big fan of iced coffee for a lot of reasons, not least of which like acid reflux and stuff like that, because I'm an old ass man now. But
so the one younger than me.
But everybody else in the house prefers hot coffee, right? But we've got a pretty good rotation going at this point where they make enough coffee in the morning where there's enough left over that they then ice what's left for me to have. So there's always a nice icy glass of iced coffee waiting for me in the fridge every morning. It does mean I'm a little bit limited in that I can't go back for seconds, but that's okay. I probably don't need as much caffeine as I used to consume in my life.
Right. And it probably has the same effect as when we were consuming, let's just be honest, too much caffeine in our younger days. Well, anyway, before we go much further, I'm drinking an iced coffee as well, though it's a Dunking iced coffee because I'm hooked. Thank you, Ben Affleck, for my new addiction, which is really just a continuation of my old addiction, that addiction being Ben Affleck. But raise your glass, listener, Sejohn, as we dedicate the 372nd episode of the Tito Report to Tito, the centerfielder on Sejohn's Little League team, who helped them win one game, right? Maybe? I don't...
Yeah. I keep going. I'm lost in the weeds here, but I'm hoping you pull me out.
This episode is dedicated to Tito, and if you don't know why, that means that you haven't listened to our very special episode on D2 the Mighty Ducks, where Sejohn introduced the folkloric centerfielder hero of East Providence Little League, we know only as Tito. So raise your glass. Man. Tito, this episode's for you.
Man,
Delicious.
Yeah, hell yeah, brother. That dude is probably like making bank somewhere doing
catching fly balls and winning Little League games. I mean, he's still in his 30s, but you know, he never technically finished the 5th grade, so he can legally play on the team.
All I can think of is that fucking Goob from Meet the Robinsons, that moment when he pulls off the cape and he's just the old man in the little boy's uniform.
I've actually never seen that movie, but I am aware of the twist. So, because it's based on a book, and I think I read the book. But yes, so I mean, that's one I do want to watch. But yeah, the other reason is because, I mean, Leap Day happened. So we're going to talk about what happened on Leap Day. We recorded something. We're not going to talk about it, but it's a time capsule, and you'll have that to look forward to. But I also wanted to share, I wanted to try to make Leap Day fantastic. And this came from 2020 Leap Day. We made fantastic. We were supposed to go to PAX East, but then we're like, I don't know, this new disease. Maybe we don't do that. So instead, we got breakfast at Cindy's. We mentioned that on the 4, Cindy's Diner up on Route 6. And then we went to the Walgreens across the street. And this is a bad story, too, because it started my obsession with Walgreens exclusive collectibles. I found...
Okay, this gets you into the weird, the weird world of Walgreens. Gotcha.
That's what did it. That's what opened the door. Because I found the Stepford Cuckoos. And if you're not familiar with those characters from Marvel Comics, they are 3 identical psychics who sort of became Emma Frost's entourage when she started teaching at the Xavier Institute in the Astonishing X-Men comic books. You know, so kind of a canceled thing. I don't think we ever go back to those now because of Joss Whedon and some of the really just kind of disgusting, what's the word here? Themes and story elements that happen in those books. But the Stepford Cuckoos.
I mean, we say that, but that's because we haven't had a proper X-Men movie in the last 15 years. We have no idea what they'll do if and when they come around. God, remember that? Remember when Disney's whole big thing was we're finally going to do the X-Men, and then everybody gave up on the universe?
Yeah. I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine is the only MCU movie coming out this year, so we'll see.
I have a sneaky suspicion that one's going to do okay. I think Mr. Deadpool is going to do what Mr. Deadpool always does. But hey, maybe even that one will surprise us. But anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the comics. And we're talking about this Mean Girls-esque storyline for Emma Frost I didn't know about.
Yeah, so I found it. And what Walgreens did was, because the Stepford Cuckoos are identical bodies, but their heads are different, they sold one figure with 3 different heads. So if you wanted to display all 3 of them, you needed to buy 3 figures.
Yeah, that seems like an odd choice because of that exact thing. They're not the same. If they were the same character but had 3 different personalities and those personalities were represented by different faces, that all makes sense to me. Yes, I want the one body, and then depending on what personality they are. But if they're 3 different characters, what a fucking joke that is. It's just because the other side of that coin is that's how all action figures are made. That's how all vinyl figures are made. They're all made off of base models that are then molded in very kind of, vague ways to make them one thing or another. So at what point do they just say, here, you buy the body and then you can just come and buy the separate parts? They've probably already done that too, actually.
I mean, that was sort of Walgreens' gig. I mean, these figures, they actually came out in 2020. The Stepford Cuckoos were released in 2020, which is why it was really strange to find them. Because now, if you go to a Walgreens, you'll probably be able to find all of the Marvel Legends exclusive figures that they were selling that were impossible to find when they released because of, supply chain and all of these other issues. The big thing there is that Walgreens had a buyer who made these deals with Hasbro to have exclusives in Walgreens, and then he was unchecked, so he would buy huge amounts, and when they found out, he was fired. And now they're just kind of left to pick up the pieces. But that Jigsaw character that I sent to you, the figure that I sent to you, I could not find him in stores when he released. And now all the Walgreens around me have 2 of them. And I'm like, well, there's something, right? But at the time, this was when it was really working rather well, the whole Walgreens exclusivity thing. And their whole oeuvre that year, it ended with that February one, but then they had an X-Force figure, not X-Force, whatever the New Mutants are. I can't think of the name of their team. Generation X, maybe? Whatever. That was a Danny Moonstar figure, but it came with a Wolfsbane head and the Psychic who eventually joins that team. I don't know her name because she wasn't a part of the original group, but she joined eventually. Because they all essentially wear the same uniform. And then for Wolfsbane, you put on the head and you switch it out for hairy hands. And then they had another figure, a Mystique figure, that came with a Lilandra head and a Rogue head. So that it could be I've taken on this face, but kept my whole Mystique body.
Yeah, see, I you know what it is? It really is just a lore thing for me. If you can give me a lore reason why you want to cheap out on the toy, then fine, I will go with you. But if you can't give me at least that handhold, then it's a ripoff. Yeah.
Well, then the worst part is that, I bought those 3 Stepford Cuckoos so I could put them on display the way that, you kind of want to do with those characters. And now I have all these extra heads just floating around in my toy bins.
Now you just have a bunch of pieces just lying around.
I don't know. But yeah, so that whole thing happened. So good, bad. And we did that. And then we still had this really fun day on the 29th. And the plan was every February 29th, we're going to have these crazy fun days. Now, that didn't necessarily happen this past day, but we made some memories. I created Danny Zuko, the fire avatar, because it turns out that's why it's called Grease. We bought coffee, and Dale spilt an entire 30-ounce coffee in the car. So
oh, no.
That's how the day started, because we're like, well, we'll carpool today to work, and then if we want to do something afterwards, we'll do something afterwards. And then, Sejohn, I don't know. You should not come back to visit this year. I love seeing you when you come to Rhode Island, but with this whole Washington Bridge thing, don't bother. Let's have everybody go to you.
Yeah. I forgot how fucking crazy it is.
Yeah.
When is that supposed to be done?
When's it supposed to be started is the better question.
Well, and like, here's one of the things. Okay, so this is we are not going to talk about construction for 30 minutes, but like the more about like the way things work in Rhode Island and how I don't know why anybody. I don't know how we didn't see this coming, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like there was a bridge that was built probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago at this point.
I believe it was built in the 60s.
No, this is the one that they redid. Like that, they built a whole bridge beside the other bridge and all of that, and they like closed those off for months, and then they switched it over. They put the India Point like walkway over. Like this bridge was rebuilt within the last like.
Oh yeah, they did recently. No, that's not the bridge that's bad. That's the one that's on Point Street. The Washington Bridge is the one on 195.
Yeah, I'm talking about that one, brother.
Oh my God, did I have them wrong?
They rebuilt that whole bridge within the last like decade and a half. And that's where all of these problems came from, because it turns out that the concrete that was used and the pylons that were put in were basically all fucking shabby. So the classic Rhode Island move of a certain amount of money was spent on quote unquote materials, and then we're finding out a decade and a half later that those materials maybe didn't cost as much as we were told.
Yeah, it was 12 years ago. I completely forgot about that expansion. Now, in my defense, not that it's very defensible, I rarely go over the bridge anyway. But they closed in July 2012.
This is where all of this came from, is because they basically built a whole second bridge next to the old bridge, shifted everybody to the new bridge, and then demolished the old bridge. And it was kind of sad because like it was a historic, like, you know, like it was a 30, 40,
1930s it opened.
Yeah. So like there was like this whole thing about it, like how sad it was that we were shifting, but the new one was bigger. It was supposed to alleviate traffic better, blah, blah, blah. And then it fell apart a decade later.
Yeah, no. Wow. To be fair, Sejohn lives literally a stone's throw from this bridge. So even though he's not in the state, it's one of those things that like he's gonna have pride about. Me, I don't go over there. There be dragons.
It's the small town New England thing. It's not pride. It's that nobody shut up about it.
That's fair.
For the 5 years before or the 5 years after, it's all anybody could talk about is the bridge, the new bridge.
Right. But again, it is really, I mean, you can't get on where we would get on the highway from your house anymore because of the new closure. Right. But yeah, so carpooling to work with Dale means going to Bristol to drop her off at work. And then usually it'd be like 40 minutes to get to where I work in Providence, which is not bad. I wake up early. I get to start the day. We get to have a fun drive in, making all sorts of jokes. And then, but now it is like an hour to an hour and a half to get from Bristol to where I work in Providence, which is kind of crazy. And in that traffic on Leap Day, I witnessed a pretty substantial accident, and I witnessed it one car length removed from what happened.
Oh,
like
man.
One of those
I'm glad
situations.
You were okay, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, because that's the kind of situation where all it takes is a couple of bad moves for you to be part of the accident.
Exactly. So, no, it was. I was very aware. Situational awareness, defensive driving. This is all a speech, talking about why those are good things. Because like I see a car trying to get over and I stop to let that car get over. Plenty of room for that car to get over, but mid-merge they stop diagonally between the new lane and the old lane. And there's an 18-wheeler flatbed truck coming up behind them, and they can't stop because you haven't moved. By all accounts, you should move.
Yeah.
And you didn't, and you got smashed into by this 18-wheeler, completely shattered the whole back of this car. The part that really stuck with me was like the logo name of the car, I think it was like a Cavalier. All of the letters went in different ways. Like when you get mad playing Scrabble and you slam the board. No, just me.
Yeah, yeah. You know what though, man? Like that's what they talk about when they talk about how how cars are built, safer now, right? Like
Yeah,
you want them to crumple, you want them to shatter, you don't want them to like try and hold their shape because then they transfer all that energy to everybody in
in
the car.
forward, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody had given this person all the space they needed to get over. It
Oh
was like
man.
kind of sad to watch. And then they got over fine to the left shoulder, and I kept going. But it was just one of those like, man, this leap day, a lot of shit is going down.
We
Yeah.
yeah, we had a little bit of an exciting leap day on this end too. We have found ourselves in the possession of a 12-week-old puppy.
Okay. Now, when you say that, it feels like it was dropped off at your doorstep, or you found it in a meteor in the backyard. Did you adopt this guy, or like what's the real story on the pup dog?
Well, so we've been looking into adopting a new doggo for a while, right? It's been kind of on the family radar, between holidays and stuff. We haven't really pushed it. Also, there's some moves going on with like jobs and things like that. So we're just like we've been, ear to the ground, but not jumping on anything too much lately. Until suddenly, we got posting about this little guy, and we found out that he was 12 weeks old. It's like the most purest of like Disney style like stories. He was the runt of the litter, wasn't really breathing when he came out. Like the vet tech that was fostering him, so foster mama had to like pump his heart for him for the first like 10 minutes of his life, that kind of thing. And like he's okay now. He's totally like just a normal dog, but that happens with the little ones sometimes. And like he's a lot because still a puppy.
Yeah.
He's got needle teeth and he's already broken my skin a couple of times. I'm teaching him not to do that stuff. But we have for the last 3 days been in full on puppy parent mode. So like up 3 times a night type things, rotations around. We've got this big like puppy pen that we've had for the older dogs for a while that is like perfect for him because he can just be in it and run around in circles and stuff. But yeah, that all happened on leap day somewhat unexpectedly. Like I said, we were looking for a dog, but it wasn't until like this guy popped up where we were like, "Oh my God, we might need to jump on this." And like it's one of those situations where for anybody that has ever done dog adoption, you could look at a listing and go, "Oh, this dog is going to be gone by the end of the day if we don't put a deposit down, if we don't do something, if we don't call somebody." Like you get that immediate feeling of like, and you do watch it happen. You get that you learn that because you watch it happen time and time again where you're like, "Oh, that dog's cute. Tonight at dinner, let's talk about that." And then you sit down at dinner and by the time you're there, you're like, "Oh, he's already adopted. Never mind. Let's like that conversation doesn't go anywhere." So like it was one of those moments where we looked at the listing and was just like, "Oh, if we don't jump on this and get this little guy, he's gonna end up with somebody else. And we can't let that happen." So we all piled in the car at like 9 o'clock at night, drove an hour down to the other side of the city, and met this wonderful woman who fostered the whole litter. She, like I said, she was a vet tech herself, so she was able to even give us this whole like medical rundown. It was the most like it was the most informative, best like laid out adoption we've done out of all of the dogs we've ever adopted, and it was happening in like my pajamas at like 2 hours after we had decided we were gonna do this.
That's crazy because you had recorded
Yeah,
like right before you had to
yeah.
go do that.
Yeah, well, so the thing is like they had shown me the dog earlier that kind of day, right? And we had been tossing it around and talking about the fact that if we didn't go, we were going to lose it. If we didn't, we were going to lose it. So, so I went into that recording knowing pretty damn well that by the time I came out, I thought they were just going to be gone. I thought the family was just going to go and get them but they waited for me, and so like we all piled in and basically headed out at that point.
That's wonderful. I love that story. I love your little leap dog baby.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's he is something else. I don't know, but I've never. This is also like this is big for me because we've never gone this young, right?
Yeah.
Like this is learning to take care of a puppy. We have so many. We have a couple of different people throughout our families that do this thing, so we don't feel like we feel like we've got a good support network. Plus, like I said, the foster mom was so good that like I mean, and she is only an hour away, so like we don't have any hesitation in like shooting her a text to just be like, what do you think, or is this what he needs, that kind of thing. So we're feeling pretty secure in that regard, but not to do the whole trick of comparing pets to children, like everybody seems to want to do. But like there is that idea that like we are, we are on new parent rotation right now, of just like somebody's up with the dog while a couple of other people get to sleep, and like we're just kind of working through and um, so if I'm a little off today, it's probably because for the last 3 days, my schedule has been a little all over the place.
And that's completely understandable. Huh, at least now you have a reason for being a little off, as opposed to every other recording.
Oh, man.
Memories. But that's good. So that's good. I got that there. And then we had all these other plans to do stuff, but then by the time getting back over the bridge and getting to Dale at the end of the day, it's like, I just kind of want to go home and be done with the day. And we did. I ended up watching Leap Year. There had been some talk that maybe we were going to do it as a very, very special episode.
Yeah, wait. Like, you say that as if like we had serious conversation, or at any point
we had one
said,
serious conversation.
We should do Leap Year, and I said no.
Yeah,
that was the conversation.
Well, now I'm taking over, and we're doing that movie. That movie is a rough movie.
Yeah,
I had never seen it. It came out 2010, so I was on the ocean. There's a reason why I didn't see it. And
just to put a button on like why, like you say it's a rough movie, and my feelings are yes, and not in a fun way. Like we watch rough movies all the time, but I don't find any redeeming fun in the ways in which that movie makes me feel super weird sometimes.
The craziest thing about that movie is that Matthew Good is in it, and he just looks dirty. It's like Matthew Good was like, you know what? I played Ozymandias in Watchmen. I never need to show up clean for a movie ever again, right? Adrian Veach, and then now I get to be me. He does not look like the Matthew Good who would show up on The Good Wife years later, who would be the bad guy in Selfless. Like,
I mean, the big thing for him that I will always love him in is what's the Stephen Hawking one there with Eddie Redmayne, The Theory of Everything.
Oh yeah.
I mean the basically like love between him, like the relationship between him and Stephen Hawking in that movie is just one of the most heartwarming bits of that film, and the two of them pull it off like marvelously. He's always good for a good old boy.
Oh, I love Matthew Good, and then see it, I'm like, that's not Matthew Good. What? And then it is, and I'm like, huh. And then to hear him talk about it, it's like the script was shite. I took it because I could go to London on the weekends when I wasn't working. And it's just like, good for you, Matthew Good. It really.
I supposedly he's a stage guy. I think if I'm remembering correctly.
He's a bigger
I've never
stage
seen him
guy.
on stage, so
neither have I.
If he is, I would love to see Matthew Good do some Shakespeare. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, like Chasing Liberty is where he first hit like my radar. That might even be his first American movie. But then he was really good as Adrian Veach in a Watchmen movie that we're going to talk about someday. That's a threatening promise that we have for you.
I mean, I'll give you a quick little like preview that might bring you back for more. I don't hate that movie.
Yeah, no, that's. Well, I think that's one of the reasons why we're going to talk. When we were talking about all these other Zack Snyder films, why would we shy away from that one?
I mean, because if we do one more, then we have to kind of go down the rabbit hole and start doing shit like Sucker Punch and stuff. But we'll get there.
I mean. Well, we'll see what happens after March, Sejohn. We're going to have to go to the redemption desk and see what they have for us. We're collecting tickets slowly but surely at Zack Snyder Presents Chuck E. Cheese.
The thing that the secret like project, if you can find it, that is a phenomenal Matthew Good project, is the wine show, and I think he's really only the host of the first season. He's one of the hosts of the first season. The guy that played not Columbo, no, Perry Mason in the HBO gritty Mason remake. What's his name?
God.
Matthew.
He was in.
That's gonna kill me.
Yeah,
but it's the two of them. It's Matt Good and him are apparently best friends in real life, and they love wine. But the whole point of the show is them getting educated, quote unquote, about wine. So they do the rich celebrity thing where they get to travel around the world and meet all these people that we would never get the opportunity to, but they use that in to learn all about like various wines all over Europe and like and talk about like putting together like wine pairings and packages and like it's got a very kind of snobby like sound to it, but the beauty of it is the two of them are the biggest like soccer hooligan bros like ever. Like they're just they get so fucking like raunchy sometimes. There's an entire one where they do like barrel rolling, but I guess in this particular place in Spain, it's popular to do barrel rolling uphill.
Oh my God.
Nuts. Yeah. So like they try and participate in that kind of stuff. It's this kind of gem of a show because like I said, it has this like snobby air of like all of the wine stuff, but then like what it is just these two guys that just love hanging out and drinking, like going around and learning about like this high class stuff. It's a blast.
I mean, it's kind of what we try to do here, except we're separated from each other. But, I did tell somebody about our legendary visits to the Guild in Pawtucket. And they're like, yeah, no, I can believe that as somebody who's listened to you talk. Memories. But yeah, so that movie, I don't need to say much more, but like, everybody has always been like, oh, it's so charming. Oh, I really enjoy that film. And I'm like, well, I've never seen it. And if I'm going to watch it, it has to be on Leap Day. And not wanting to wait 4 more years, I bought it on Amazon where it was on sale for the same price as a rental. Because, like, they knew what was going on. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Can I ask, like, tell me if I'm wrong. This is the one where, like, the idea is that on Leap Day, women can ask men to get married, right? Am I misremembering that?
No, you're not. That's an old Irish folklore tradition. Is that
right? But that is the plot of the movie. Is off of that tradition, right? Like I'm remembering the right film here.
You are remembering the right film. Caitlin Olsen is in the film for 3 scenes. Sweet D herself, and I'm like, damn, I did not know that. Doesn't really affect my opinion of this film one way or another, but it was nice to see her in something other than, Dee Reynolds or the Mick. I loved the Mick. I will be completely honest about that. But it was cool to see her in that movie, and then I'm just like, so people, they just saw this movie once and were like, that was charming. They've not seen it again. Because it's the kind of thing that I'm not surprised didn't blow up social media. Like, reminder, if you watch Leap Year today, you're going to see a pre-Sunny Caitlin Olsen. Something else that would happen if, Drew Carey wasn't essentially lost media.
Yeah. I know. It'd break my heart.
I'm sorry.
But, I don't remember much more than that, to be honest, because we saw it once and then was basically deemed, like, not worthy of ever going back to again. But, like, I remember basically that premise alone being the pretty much hot button issue with the group I was watching with. When it came out, I was in a particular group that was, big on dissecting those kinds of things. Let's put it that way. And like that
it was Sejohn's first year of graduate
pretty
school.
Much set off everybody.
Just for anybody there. Yeah, no, I don't blame them. It's really weird because she's like, oh, it's that tradition where women get to ask men to marry them. And I'm like, hey, isn't it 2010? Couldn't a woman propose fucking anyway? Why do you need like an excuse and a lie? And the better part of the whole movie is her whole thing is she's trying to get to Dublin by the 29th to ask on the 29th. And then she gets there on the 29th, and Adam Scott friggin' proposes to her. So, like, the whole thing is like just thrown away for plot reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Because he only proposes because the old Spaced problem. And maybe there's other shows, but I will always attribute it to Spaced. And again, you'll get to hear more about that later on in March. Right, which is why we have to visit the redemption desk for clarification. But it's one of those situations where, like, yeah, I got the feeling that they're traditional. So if we were married, we'd get the apartment. He's like, we were going to do it eventually, though. But then she's like, oh, he doesn't really love me. Oh, okay. And then there's also another weird scene where, like, they're going to get on a train to Dublin. And then they go walk up to a castle. So they miss the train. And then the guy who he doesn't own the train stationeer. What's the name of that? Are you a conductor if you work at the train station?
No, but Oh man,
He's like
now
the
you got me.
station
But
agent.
but the station agents. Yes,
Yeah,
there you go.
that's just the exact term. But yeah, so the station agent owns a bed and breakfast in town. So he's like, "Come, you'll stay with us." And they go, and his wife is like, "Oh, thank God I didn't let those backpackers stay because you could tell they weren't married." And so they have to pretend that they're married for like an extended period of this movie. This is Matthew Good and Amy Adams who have to pretend that they're married. And it's fucking just the weirdest shit.
Well,
Like,
when what's wild is now I'm remembering more about this movie as you're describing it. What's wild is what bugged me at the time is how unnecessary the two plots are, right? Either make it a thing about how they have to pretend to be married in order to stay in this conservative place, or make it about this idea of this tradition in Ireland that, right, like like as the as the privileged white guy in the room at the time, white male in the room at the time, it didn't, this is what rubbed me the wrong way more than the marriage proposal stuff. Just telling of what my where my headspace was when we went back then. But this idea that like it also is just structurally unnecessary to have these two, like they are both complications enough in the world of the movie, not that I consider the whole marriage proposal thing a true complication, but in the world of this film, it is such a big deal that this thing can happen that that's the plot of the movie. Or it's such a big deal that these two pretend to be married because in this world that is required in order for them to keep a room, right? That is like pick one, pick your lane.
right? You don't get to dump every trope into the stew and have it taste good. And then the thing that really pisses me off is that they're not quiet about the fact that they're trying to get to Dublin. And then the next morning they wake up and he's like, they're like, "Oh, you have a car. Can you drive us into Dublin?" He's like, "Oh, no, I can't do that. My wife has the car. She's going to church and then she'll do the shopping." And they're like, "Oh, well, when she gets back," and he's like, "Oh, she's not going to be back before like dinner time. She's in Dublin." And it's like, it would have been nice if you could have been like, "Hey, I'm driving to Dublin." She was going there anyway.
I do think that is the joke, but yes, I agree.
It's just so frustrating. I mean, like movies like that.
Yeah, that movie, that is something I remember about that movie, is that it was frustrating to watch, but because there was just so much going on with the plot and the characters that nobody in the room was enjoying, that it was just like it became that moment of, why aren't any of us stopping this? Like there was legitimately that moment for.
Because if we don't finish it, then it will live forever in our minds. If we see the resolution.
And I was definitely, like probably one of the antagonistic forces in the room at that moment, because I was also in that space in my life where like I was watching and consuming anything and everything. And the idea of not consuming it, especially once I started it, just would not have, it would have rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, I get that. I understand it. Yeah. I'm still kind of like that. The only movie I've never finished is American Beauty.
That's wild to me because I actually, I don't love that movie like some people do, but I don't think that's a bad movie.
I just was so bored. And I'm just like, I don't care about any of these people. I'm done with the movie now. Thanks for playing. Can you think
of a good family ensemble drama of that level that you do like, or is that just a whole genre you don't like? This is just me being curious.
No, that's a good question. I was trying to think of, there's like that weird movie, but I didn't like it. Like that's the reason why I can't tell you the name of it. It was the John Krasinski one where Margot Martindale was his mother. And I'm just like, this movie just feels so unnecessary.
I think of like The Squid and the Whale, or I think of like even Boyhood. I think really falls. I
liked Boyhood a lot. Boyhood is I really enjoyed my experience seeing Boyhood, because there's that scene where his second stepfather opens a beer, and it's like the most innocent beer ever. He is not angry at that moment. He is just existing, but he has gotten home from work and he opens a beer. And the woman in the back of the theater gasped and I imagine clutched her pearls. If she wasn't wearing pearls, she clutched her clavicle. Because she's just like, that means that he's an alcoholic. And I'm like, he's having one beer as an adult. No, I don't believe that he is. And actually, he ends up being the first total jerk that's in the kid's life. And a male character. But that... And I'm just like, yeah, he had a beer. Like, people can drink alcohol and not be evil. Thanks,
I know
Hollywood.
this complicates the world. Yeah, I know this complicates the world for you, but like this is possible. Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
It sounds like it might just be a genre though that maybe just doesn't always work for you. So that might be why.
That could be part of it. I will admit that. But that movie
it is also on the weirder end of that genre. Like it is a weird movie in that regard.
Yeah.
But see, like that's part of why I can't believe you didn't finish it is because of the weirdness of it.
I like the weirdness felt like something that was trying to keep me engaged. And I'm like,
know what the end of that movie is?
Spoilers for American Beauty. Maybe. The dad who isn't Kevin Spacey, so the bad guy from the Muppets.
Okay, yes, you know what's
okay. All right.
Well, because I was gonna say, because one of the other big things about that movie in particular that I remember when I was watching it that might have helped me be getting to the end. I don't hate the movie, but I had been led to believe that the ending was more ambiguous than it actually is. And anybody that's seen the movie knows that they definitely play with a little bit of ambiguity and a little bit of like. Yeah, there's some things that happen at the end of that movie that are up in the air, not necessarily in like we don't know what happened, but we don't know what people would have done otherwise. Like it's a tense movie that has a very kind of weird release at the end. But I had been led to believe that there was a much more fusion and debate about what happened, and then I watched it and I was like, no, this isn't. To use like a metaphor down the line. It's not the top at the end of Inception. It's pretty straightforward what happens, but there is definitely discussion about like what different characters like feel about what happened. So like there's this really interesting ending to it that was made all the more interesting because somebody basically lied to me.
That's cool. See, and that's part of the nature of the folkloric thing that is part of cinema. It's why discussions about film are so cool, because we talked about perception in an episode to be released at a later date, but like it's one of those other things where that person's interpretation of that film led you to believe something about that film that enhanced your viewing and thus perception of that film. And now you've just passed that along to any of our listeners. So if they've never seen the movie, they may have that same sort of drive or it's cool. It's cool that like even in a world where things are more like permanent, the way that film is, because like theater, even with all the rehearsal and blocking, no two theatrical performances are exactly the same. No two tellings of stories around the fire after the hunt were the same, right? But with movies, it's pretty much the same thing every time.
Yeah, it's the breakthrough that film gave us in photography and then eventually in moving picture.
Yeah.
Is that idea that we can hold on to more detail. Although even that is somewhat up for debate. If I have got to see a really cool documentary at Sundance a year or two back, all about exactly that idea that like we are getting to a point where even that's not true, just because time comes for us all, and things like film deteriorating will actually mean that we start to lose certain details even in that realm as well. It's a wild idea, but film being the most permanent way we have to hold on to things currently. Although that's not true because now we have digital.
Now we have digital storage, yeah.
But we've started to now talk about how we're slowly kind of not running out of space on the internet, but more like running out of like the resources to keep it going. Which is scary as hell because, like, again, we've talked about this recently. I think we were kind of always led to believe that the internet was going to be limitless, and we're starting to learn that that may not be as true as we thought.
Yes, which, well, we'll be talking about the internet in a little bit once we finish up this whole thing, and we're reaching the end. But in terms of that impermanence of film thing, after learning for the first time this week that Dane Cook hosted SNL not once but twice, Sejohn and I spiraled into a conversation about Dane Cook's film appearances, and I was convinced that a scene from My Best Friend's Girl, the 2008 fucking just insane film that I will reserve a conversation about for a later date on this show, or even just a later time. We don't have time to get into it if we want to cover everything else this
you were
episode.
A big like Dane Cook guy back when he was big.
Oh, I hated Dane Cook. I hated.
Fan?
No,
sous chef. Yeah, sous chef. Were you a sous chef back in the day?
No, I was not. And the reason was I was like, you know, I try to be a funny person, right? I try to have these comedy stuff or things like that. At least in high school, where I was named like class clown. And when Dane Cook started to become popular, a lot of people would say, "Oh, that's funny. You're like Dane Cook." And I didn't
think
know
had this exact conversation because I think this is because I think I've relayed the story about how I ended up seeing Dane Cook in an arena in Boston, like a sold out arena in Boston.
Yeah.
And like, not because I asked to be there, but because somebody bought me the tickets because apparently I just gave off that kind of vibe that I like, that I would be the kind of person to enjoy this show. And I was like, not mad I got the tickets, but I was like, this is a weird. Have I given you the impression that this would be a good gift for me?
Yeah, no, I mean, I never had to go see him live, which that seems wrong the way that I said that. But it is one of those situations where it was this weird thing where suddenly I was being compared to this person, or like, oh, you stole that from this person. And I'm like, I don't even know who that person is. So thank you. Like, I didn't know how to deal with it. And I do remember after seeing him on a late night show where he talked about I'm on MySpace, I friended him on MySpace, and I think I've said this on the show before because I remember being in front of a microphone saying this, and I sent him the very cryptic message along with my MySpace friending. I believe in keeping my friends close and my enemies closer, Mr. Cook, and then sent that.
That's the kind of shit that gets you looked at by the FBI nowadays.
Yeah, right. And it was just like, yeah, so that whole thing. But like I was convinced about My Best Friend's Girl that the scene that I think is one of the funniest moments in that film, because it involves Jason Biggs, and hopefully that's enough for anyone in the audience to connect the dots, only happened in the unrated version of that film. But no, it happens in the rated version. It's just the joke afterwards is way not safe for work. Like borderline pedophilic. So, yeah. I like, 'cause I went out and I got an unrated, a Blu-ray copy that said rated, unrated, digital, open parentheses, expired, close parentheses. Like, yeah, digital copies included. You're not going to be able to get it. It's not there. But you'll have discs of both the rated and unrated.
And we just wanted to let you know that the digital one would have been available to you if you'd gotten on this ball faster.
Yeah, if you bought this one, this came out on Blu-ray. Like, yeah, it will be my secret shame that I bring with me into the afterlife. That's going to be my unfinished business, was not being able to redeem the digital code.
And find out that I can only get an iTunes copy or some shit like that.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it's expired because the platform you would have gotten the digital copy from, it no longer exists.
It doesn't exist. It was bought 3 times now, and probably nobody has access to their library anymore.
Yeah, frickin'. But yeah, so I did that and I watched it and I'm like, man, I remembered because of that joke at the end, I thought that the whole sequence was like not safe for cinemas and would have been removed from it. But no, it exists in the rated version. I had just never seen the rated version until I looked up the scene that I sent you.
I honestly couldn't tell you which version I had seen of that movie because, like, we watched it, once in a group, and it was really big back then to just get the unrated version.
I'm fairly certain
that's what we got, but that's not a guarantee, I guess.
If we were together when we saw it, which might have been the case considering the people that I consumed that movie with, I was really into it. And come to find out, it's because it's Howard Deutsch, and I love Howard Deutsch. Some Kind of Wonderful is one of my favorite films. Ditto The Replacements from the... Yeah, he did that one as well, which I think is 2001. So he's just one of the
Keanu Reeves football strike episode movie, right?
Cool. Episode movie. And he ended up married to Leah Thompson, and then they have their daughter Zoe Deutsch, who's like fun little actor in things like Everybody Wants Some or Why Him. Like I've gotten to see her in some fun stuff going forward too. But it's weird the Howard Deutsch Leah Thompson thing. And yeah, because they met on Some Kind of Wonderful when he was much older than her and her director. But we're not going to talk about that part because they've been in love and together since 1987. So something's working, right? Not my point to question. But yes.
There are nuances to that conversation that you and I are not fit to discuss.
Yes, exactly. We're outside of the scope. Let's reel ourselves back in. But yeah, so that was a whole thing too. But that really only thought that was in the unrated version because of just like the topic of it and everything. But no, it's in the rated version. It's just somehow they went a step further in the unrated version. And that's what I always think about with that movie too, is that all of the stuff that is in the unrated version is also in the rated version, but then there's like one more joke to punctuate them that then makes it, oh, we need to burn this. And it's the worst kind
of unrated scam. Like that's how they used to get you all the time, is they would say that there was an unrated version available, and then you'd get it, and all it was just that like they'd have some 80-yard line of somebody saying the F word in a couple of extra scenes or some shit like that. I mean, like there were some legitimate ones.
Yeah,
we talked before about how like unrated versions of like Waiting, where they do things like pause the movie and like make like other bits and jokes about the movie, or Sex Drive, where like they just straight up just like change the entire plot for about 20 minutes of that movie and stuff. Like or Anchorman, the whole second movie that they released alongside the first movie.
Wake up, Ron Burgundy.
Yeah. Like there are definitely legitimately like interesting and worthwhile dives into the unrated extra edition or not rated version. Like that is definitely got its merit in some places. But we just saw that slew at that time of all of these movies realizing that they could make bank by putting out a quote unquote unrated version, and all they had to do was just let the camera run a couple of seconds longer on Jason Biggs, right? And then suddenly, boom, we get that dirty line, and then we can go.
Yeah. It's because that's the movie where Dane Cook's character is essentially the buff guy on the beach pretending to bully your girlfriend, and then you're like, hey, back off, dude. And then when he walks away, like, so you look like a hero to your girlfriend, and then you slip him $50.
Right.
Like, thank you for fake bullying me so I can look like the hero.
Good Luck Chuck, where he's the guy that you hire to go out with the girl so that you could show up and save her on the beach, and then you slip him $50.
No, that's my best friend's girl. Good Luck Chuck is the fact that anyone who sleeps with... After he sleeps with... he turns it into a business, right?
He turns it into a business where then people
they're the same basic movie, aren't they?
Yeah. Yes, he then goes, pay me money to go and do this thing so that you can then get the girl in the end. It is literally the same scam, just played from the other direction.
Yeah, wow. So thank you, Sejohn, for reminding me what Good Luck Chuck was. I forgot that there was that whole part where he used his powers for evil.
Yeah, no, he basically it's the just go with it Sandler turn where he gets really hurt by it when in his youth, and so he turns it into a quote unquote like superpower or villainous power, but like he then uses it to like make money.
As you do, I guess. With great power, great responsibility or something. But yeah, so that's the whole thing. And one of the things is he takes out like a very religious girl to a pizza restaurant called Cheese's Crust. And they show like Jesus on the cross and it's a pepperoni pizza. And I'm just like, man, I imagine that has to be only in here because it's the unrated version. Nope, that's in the rated version.
Well, because that's such a stretch for a joke.
Yeah, it is. That's a weird movie, and I didn't see it in theaters because again, not a real big Dane Cook guy. But then someone's like, "Hey, you work at Hollywood Video. Why don't you rent My Best Friend's Girl and we can watch it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll watch it." And then I ended up loving it. Mostly for the direction. I will admit that. Like, it's a Howard Deutsch movie. So like even the most despicable characters are directed to be like, oh, but he's kind of endearing. Like, he just got hurt at one point in his life. I want to bring him home like a little puppy and teach him not to bite. And like,
yes,
he
comes from a school of character work that really kind of wants you to feel for the bully.
Well, let me say this. The worst part about that movie, we've spent more time on My Best Friend's Girl than I wanted to. Apologies to you, the listener. Apologies to the Irish for that accent. But Jason Biggs' character is the fucking worst. Like, it is like, and that's saying something. Like, the way that, like, the guy who literally pretends to be, takes the girl on the worst date on their life as rebound so that they'll go running back into the arms of the guy they just broke up with, realizing how good they have it. And that's pretty fucking toxic too. I'm not saying that, oh, thank God that he exists as this like benevolent force to like teach women how good they had it, because there's a bunch of crazy guys out there. Not saying that at all. But Jason Biggs' character in that movie is somehow worse than that guy.
Yeah.
Which is saying something.
I mean, I do believe that is exactly why he exists, right? Is like, we need to have, because the other guy you're describing is the protagonist of the film.
Right.
And so you need to have somebody in there that is worse than him so that you can still let him be the protagonist of the film. Yeah. And that happens a lot in these kinds of like, specifically in the teen, like dating comedies, right? These like these ones that we would all go out to on a Friday night and pay like $1 at the cheap theater to go see. And we were there more to make out than we were to watch the movie, right? Like that's where this movie falls. Is right into that category. And like there is something about those movies where they always have to have this guy that has this, terrible power. You think like Shallow Hal, he's not a great protagonist, but his ability, like his superpower that he gains in order to like see the world differently and stuff like that. Like there always has to be that guy. And then at some point there's this realization of like, these guys are still not the best. You keep making these movies about these guys. And so what happens is then they start inserting these characters that are like, yeah, but at least he's not that guy, right? Am I right? And it's like, yeah, I guess you're right. Still doesn't make this main character that much better of a person.
I mean, as much as you're going to say that, like, I feel like watching Jason Biggs in My Best Friend's Girl is the point where I realized, oh, just because a guy is quote unquote a nice guy doesn't mean that he's a good guy. Right? Like it was the first time because Jason Biggs is classic romantic comedy lead, is like what his character archetype is, oh, I'm always there for her and eventually she'll realize that she loves me. And it's like, that's a toxic way to live, brother. Girls are not prizes to be won when you've collected enough tickets. But right. That's his character. And then like, he is so much worse than Tank, who, like, that's the other thing. His fucking name is Tank. Dane Cook's character's name is Tank. He's so much worse than Tank, who, like, was hurt in a relationship and then realized that, like, I just want to have casual stuff and also help some people along the way for money while helping myself with monetary gain. Like, he has a reason why he's hurt. Jason Biggs just buys into, if I'm nice to a girl long enough, maybe she'll let me sleep with her. Yay. That guy sucks.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's very classic, like 80s, like movie protagonist, right? And you're talking about a guy that came up in making movies in the 80s. So
yeah, 80s and the 90s.
It seems like, it seems like it really fits into that whole oeuvre. Yeah, man, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. So sorry for all that talk about My Best Friend's Girl. Last thing in this part of the conversation before we move on to other things in this episode. You know what movie came out 7 years ago, Sejohn? To today?
7 years ago, so that would be 2017 we're talking about?
2004. Yeah, 2017. That's right. Man, math is fun.
I thought you had the date in front of you.
I do have the date in front of me. I'm just an idiot.
I don't know. It would have to be
March 3rd, 2017.
I don't know. Is it shit.
I'll give you a hint. We talked about him a little bit earlier in this episode. What?
Avatar? Oh,
no.
Deadpool? Did Deadpool come out then?
Nope. Logan. Schnickty schnoy. Yeah. Because I have been inundated with memories from myself on Facebook about how, like, I never need to see another movie again. Logan was perfection.
Yeah. Fantastic, man.
Yeah. So, just
a
reminder.
Have they put the black and white version up on Disney Plus, or is it just the original version?
I think just the original version, because when we watched it, we watched through all the all the movies you need to see to get ready for stuff, and I'm like, we should watch Logan too because my parents had never seen it, and I'm like, we're watching the black and white version, and I specifically had to go down and get the Blu-ray that I bought. That was the black and white version. I love that version of that movie. I just love that movie, as evidenced by the fact that 7 years ago, I'm like, I never need to see another movie again. Logan is it. And yeah, I mean, I've seen other movies, but yeah, Logan is still kind of it. Spoilers for Logan, a 7-year-old movie to the day, when we're recording this, not when this releases. The whole plot line of sprinkling the mutant cure into, like, food so that, like, mutants were cured and eradicated, but like not blatantly, just like over time, is fucking scary. Like, I mean, that's a cool plot device.
It's more like the cure is sprinkled into food with the intention that further generations, less and less mutants will be born as generations go on, right? It's like this like slow eradication, right? Yeah. Man. Like, it's I mean, that's a fucked up like plot in that movie. Like, you know, that is kind of the whole point, right? Is this Elseworlds like bad ending essentially for Logan and Charles, and I adore that movie. I think it is super well put together. I think there's a lot of really cool film stuff in it. I mean, the you know, starting with the whole thing being this like retelling of the story of Shane, right? And like in the ways in which it pays homage to that genre and stuff. And yeah, no, it's a beautiful film, and it's probably one of the most important like Marvel films that has ever come out and will ever come out, because like whenever anybody talks about Marvel, they will have to talk about that moment when Logan really kind of came in and like really kind of showed everybody what superhero movies could be. And in some ways that was not always that was not for the best for some movies in the future, because like it really kind of put a damper on when movies tried to be something like that, right? Be impactful, and you just like, they don't quite land it. And it's because we now know what you can do, right? I will never say that it is like the cause of the, you know, the MCU breakdown, but there was definitely this moment where like a certain level of fandom suddenly had its expectations raised, and all we've ever talked about with this genre is how the expectations problem, like they could never get over the expectations problem. They still haven't, at least to this day. We'll see, maybe they can pull something crazy out of their hat in the next decade, but you know, I think we are slowly looking at kind of the, you know, much like the death of the Western, right? I think we're kind of looking at the death of the superhero movie right now. It doesn't mean they'll be gone forever, but we'll never see it at this level ever again, right?
I agree. I mean, that's one of the other reasons why I wanted to bring up the fact that Logan was 7 years ago, because where we are now with the genre and sort of the complete collapse of it in a lot of ways, not in every way, but, you know, the way that people are talking about the superhero genre in the wake of Madam Web is very telling. And then, you know, you go back and you look at it, and yeah, and the other issue with something like Logan, I know that we just talked about the big conspiracy in it and the fact that, like, we've put in the cure for mutations into the food. Like, that's a huge, sweeping conspiracy sort of thing that does happen in the movie, undeniable. But also, it is a relatively small-scale superhero film, as everything, and that works, as everything around it was ballooning to bigger and bigger stakes and consequences of what is happening in the films. Yep. I mean, like, a year later, we have Infinity War that literally spans the universe and ends with half of the universe dying.
Yeah.
As opposed to, like, this small story that is kind of 3 people just trying to make it through the day so that they can die peacefully. Whew, I'm sorry.
It's definitely a journeyman tale. Logan's fantastic. If you get the opportunity to go see it, do. If you do get the chance to see it in black and white, like, totally do, just go for it, because it also totally just looks gorgeous. You know, it looks good even in the theatrical version as well, but there is something about the ways in which it transfers to that black and white that makes it feel just gorgeous. You know what it is for me is as somebody that read a lot of black and white, not a lot of, but had read a few black and white Logan stories, and like getting to see it look just like ink on the screen kind of stuff. You know, it just looks like that nostalgia for me is something. Yeah.
And then as the other hand of that, and we're going to talk about X-Men: The Last Stand very influenced by the first issues of Astonishing X-Men to tie it all together. Like, the Cure storyline and that being so big, essentially taking that same element and injecting it into that smaller scale-ish story was really cool. To be like, yeah, it's not that this isn't a storyline that doesn't work. It's just that the way we handled it in that film that was full of several other storylines, again, we'll get there eventually on the show, that kind of, diluted the significance of a cure and how it would work within the world of mutants. Man, God, I love Logan. I'm sorry to bring it up because it kind of derailed everything that we're talking about.
No.
Which now brings me to the topic I want to talk about, and apologies to Sejohn because I am springing it on him. Did you hear that Drea De Matteo was able to pay off her mortgage by joining OnlyFans? Page 6 covered it.
Yay. Why are we covering it?
We're covering it because I want to have a brief discussion with you, and it doesn't need to go that long.
What is your goal in mining this particular ore, Devon? What are we looking for?
This particular vein, ore is what comes from the vein. I took a mining class. I almost minored in mining. You mine ore, but you have to find a lode and then a vein. The terminology of mining is fascinating. It's really the fact that, like, why is this news is what I want to talk about.
I'm asking, why are you bringing the shiny bauble to me, Devon? Very good, it's shiny.
No, but the reason I'm bringing the shiny bauble to you is, like, why was this shiny bauble brought to us? And the question that I have is this semi-marketing for OnlyFans? Like, to raise people's awareness of it? Like, it just felt so... Obviously, before I heard about Drea De Matteo paying off her mortgage using OnlyFans, I knew what OnlyFans was. I did not participate in OnlyFans as either a creator or a subscriber, but I knew that it was out there. Now, I wonder, like, who was that article for? Because I don't think it was for our generation. I don't think it was for the younger generation. It feels like it was trying to bring knowledge of OnlyFans to, like, our parents' generation. And that's, like, I'm trying to think of, like, it was just a strange moment where I read it, where I'm like, well, good for her. Surprise, surprise, you can make money selling pictures of yourself on the internet, right? Thank you for this article. But then I'm like, but there are people who probably didn't know that. And that's what the whole thing just was very interesting to me.
Well,
I was curious what you thought on it.
Well, so I think the important thing is that the way that I have seen it presented is the other side of that coin is it's that idea that an actress that we all can point to a super successful show. She was on The Sopranos, right? Am I remembering?
No, right? She was on Joey. She was on both of those. But yes,
she was on The Sopranos.
Okay. She was Christopher's girlfriend on The Sopranos.
Right. Yeah. But like, you talk about an actress that was on The Sopranos and then saying that she is at a point in her life where she has had to, and this is not me putting this spin on this. I'm just explaining what the spin is that I've seen on it, is that, oh, she has had to resort to OnlyFans to pay off her mortgage. Like, she was on this successful show, and this is now where this person finds themselves. And I don't know if it's supposed to be an indictment on her as an actress, an indictment on the state of the world, or what in that, like, beyond that. But that seems to be the way that they're going at it. Just to your point about who is this for, I do think it is for an older crowd, because I think that's the kind of story that only really affects, like, a boomer generation, right? Because, like, let's be frank, there are people that are our age, that are around us, that have invested in platforms like OnlyFans as a way to make a living, and that's just a side hustle nowadays. That's par for the course, right? Like, we don't turn our nose up at that because we know that that's a choice that some people are making. For some, it's a healthy choice. For others, it may not be, but like that, and that is definitely a discussion worth having. Right. But like, the idea of it happening is not news to us, right? Whereas older generations than us, I think that is something that is newsworthy to them. That this idea that an actress that they can point to multiple projects, as you pointed out, that they have seen them in, has resorted to what they have been informed is basically this pay for play platform that is sexually oriented, which is interesting also because, like, there's part of me that's like, there are safe for work OnlyFans pages, aren't there? Like, I know there are other fan apps out there that promote themselves as safe for work compared to the not safe for work OnlyFans. But doesn't OnlyFans itself also have kind of that within it? I don't know. I don't know much about the business
Yeah,
model,
so I was talking with people about it, and they were like, "Oh, I hear it's just porn. It's not pornography. Your OnlyFans page could be whatever you want it to be. It could
Right.
be like there's always a joke of like I'm going to
That's how
start
I've
an
understood it, yeah.
I'm going to start an OnlyFans page, and it will be pictures of fans. Ha ha, punny. Maybe I'll get some subscribers. Your OnlyFans pan could be you eating a bunch of different hot dogs."
Right, they don't
Right?
kick you off if you don't put porn up, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
that's essentially what we're saying is like you can have an OnlyFans page and not do that, but at this point in the history, in the zeitgeist, you have to be aware that if you're telling people you have an OnlyFans page, there's a certain expectation that comes along with that, shall we say? But yeah, I mean, there's been like YouTube stars that have done like tasteful OnlyFans pages is what they call them, so they're not like full nudes because they just don't want those out there. But they figure if people are going to be looking for this kind of material, you know, to the point where we live in the world of deep fakes and AI now, if people are going to be going that route, I'd rather be the one at the forefront of it. So let me put some of my own stuff out there that again is more safe for work, more tasteful, but at least it's enough of a taste to keep you animals fed, so you don't go down the rabbit hole, right? Like there's this there's that idea going on.
What a
for sure.
dystopian way to
but-
talk about a very true issue on the internet.
I mean, you
Jeez.
know,
No,
this
no,
is
I'm-
what
I'm-
you have to think of
yeah.
as a content creator nowadays, right? Like there's something to be said. I was watching a video of a couple of guys play like probably like an Unovid or something like that from like 4 or 5 years ago, and one of them had just been trying to get verified on Twitter and it wasn't working, was having trouble getting verified. And everybody else in the group was kind of ragging on him for not being able to get verified. And then he pulled out of them that none of them were verified either, but they also hadn't been really trying. And he said something I felt pretty prescient at the time. He goes, as content creators in the public space, we should probably all make sure that we all get that blue check mark at some point because otherwise there's potential for everybody to be out there just saying that they're like it's like it was like a really wild moment from like 2017 2016 of this content creator just being like, yeah, that check mark is going to become basically going to mean a lot in the coming years for people like us, right? Like,
Yeah, when those were first introduced, and it's like
yeah
making sure that they know it's your voice that's coming out of your mouth.
that Twitter stands behind you and says this is for sure who they say they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like to the OnlyFans stuff, to the social media stuff, like this idea that they have had to turn to a known sexually explicit social media platform in order to make ends meet, despite being on two named shows that we have pointed out and more. I mean,
And more. She's done way
than those
more.
as well.
And no one's
Yeah.
thinking of her from Joey. It's just fun to bring up that, like,
But
she was
like
on
that
Sopranos,
idea, right?
but
Like
Joey.
that says something to an older audience when they hear that story. I don't know, man. Like I said, like I don't know enough about like what's going on in regards to her and her professional life and personal life and all that stuff. Like, you never know. You'll never know anything about people's personal lives, and you shouldn't. But like, I don't know enough about what's going on in her professional life to point to it as like a move in one direction or another. You know, if this is just something that she just wanted to do with her life, like then more power to her.
Right.
But if this is like one of those situations where like after all of these successful projects that she's worked on, she still finds herself needing to turn to OnlyFans, is like the way that it's being talked about. And like that is unfortunate, I guess. But also, again, we live in the time of the side hustle nowadays. Like everybody is out there. I mean, hell, I just joined Fiverr this week. Is that salacious? Like as a content creator, I should say, not just like going onto Fiverr and asking people to make shit for me, but like I put my shit out there, and I can drop that link in the Discord at some point if anybody wants to get a project done by me. But like I've also had to kind of go in this direction as well. Not full on OnlyFans yet, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I read it, the articles that I've read, I'll talk about that. She was about to default on her mortgage, signed on to OnlyFans, and within like an hour of posting scantily clad photos of herself, which again feels like semi-safe for work, not full-on nudes, right? She was able to get her finances back on track. Yeah. And like, so I hear that, and I'm like, on some level, it also feels like they're trying to entice people to the platform. Like, look how much money she was able to make in just a few short hours. Disregard the fact that she is a known person who is famous for being on at least 2 shows, right?
Yeah.
One of which was a cultural touchstone, and one of which was The Sopranos. But sorry, but it's
so mean to Joey.
No, I mean, well, think about it. Actually, I'm being mean to Joey, but every time I'm mean to Joey, I'm like, it was the spin-off of Friends. It was huge. Like, it should have.
But to your point about the OnlyFans stuff, right? I don't think OnlyFans is mad about the attention that they're getting from this at all.
Not at all.
I don't think they turn their nose up to it. I don't think they're the ones pushing any of it, though. I think this is more of the maybe not the Streisand effect specifically, but maybe like a second cousin of it, where like people like Fox News who are clutching pearls and talking about this, because that's what I'm looking at. Daily Mail is also in front of me with the same story, so we're running in the same ilk here. But like people like that want to turn this into something scandalous, so they report on it as if it's scandalous, and then all it does is inform everybody that it exists and just feeds the beast, right? Like it's that idea that like they were talking about it in a way to shame it, but all they've actually done is actually promote it, and like idiots. Like, of course that's what was going to happen, right? The more that people talk about it. I don't think this is OnlyFans out there like leaking her shit to Fox News for them to like do a story on it. I don't think
right. I mean, but there's no bad publicity is still a true statement, right? Though we've kind of learned that there is some bad, whatever. I mean, there's a line with that. It is something that it feels, just because we now live in this time where anything that you see reported as news could be sponsored content in some way, shape, or form. It was one of those things where, like, that's how my mind approached this. And I guess I wanted to bring it here to discuss it because, I think it's a strange time for this story to come out. If this story had come out at, like, the height of the SAG-AFTRA strikes, I would probably have more to say about it, as to terms of like, this is SAG-AFTRA being like, go with your story to these journalists so that they know that like, you're on strike, you might default on your mortgage, this is what you have to do, like, without the protections of the union and all of this stuff. Like, the fact that it's happening in February of 2024, so 4 to 5 months after all of that was resolved, like, I don't understand why it's quote unquote news. And then
I mean, that's why is because first of all, the only people that watch news or consume news regularly anymore are an older generation. So you have to always assume it's aimed at them. And if you really think about it, when it's aimed at them, it does kind of make sense in terms of the shock value, viewer count.
I get it. It's pearl clutching type stuff. It's Texas has a whorehouse in it.
They're doing exactly what they're accusing her or accusing anybody that uses OnlyFans of doing, right? Is like you're exploiting yourself for views. And it's like, oh really? Is that what we're going to talk about in this exploitive article on your website?
Yeah, that's another side of it. It's also, I mean, OnlyFans really saw its rise because of the pandemic. That's the other thing. I've been real pandemic minded lately because we're coming up on the 4th anniversary of when it all happened, right? Like I said, PAX East was the 29th. I ended up not going. So I'm just thinking about how the world was different 4 years ago before everything shut down, and then OnlyFans saw its rise as people were stuck at home and needed to find a new source of income. Ditto something like Twitch and all of the content creators that were born on Twitch. But
a really good one for one. The other side of this coin is Cameo. Cameo also blew up during COVID because there was a bunch of actors and actresses and other types of celebrities that were sitting at home needing to make some cash, and an easy way for them to do that was to put their info up on Cameo, and people could, go and hire some second string quarterback to say hi to dad for his birthday, right? Or something like that, because they couldn't be playing right now, so they needed to produce something. But like, in the ways in which you talk about OnlyFans blowing up during COVID, because there were creators that needed to do something in order to make money, and there was an audience that was ready to consume anything, right? The same thing also happened in something like Cameo, which is a much more safer work version of this, but it is essentially the same thing. You are paying specific money to a private individual for a type of content that is being provided by the app that you don't necessarily get in other places. You can't just go onto fucking Facebook and ask Brad Pitt to say hello to your mom and dad. But if he's got a Cameo,
he's probably not going to do it though.
Right.
Yeah.
But right, because you're being provided a safe space that where everybody understands the beginning and end of the relationship and all of that sort of stuff. Cameo provided that space for creators in that regard as well.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just like now that things are starting to sort of regulate themselves again, right? Like nature is healing, or what, however you want to fucking say it. We are seeing issues with like Twitch laying off people and there being less money to go around, so that the people who like could make a living during the pandemic are no longer able to make a living streaming on Twitch. We're seeing sort of the same thing on OnlyFans, not to the same extent, right? But the advertising for OnlyFans that has sort of ruined X, formerly Twitter, because you can't go one scroll without seeing someone like, hey, join my OnlyFans, it's discounted this week. And
Yeah,
it's like,
so Twitter and OnlyFans always had that kind of relationship. The difference was that when everybody was on Twitter, it was much more watered down. Now that it has dried up a lot, and all that's left is the OnlyFans. It's a thick syrupy grenadine at the bottom of your Shirley Temple that's left. Like that's what you've got now. I feel like people want to talk about OnlyFans blowing up on X because of certain things, and that may be true. There may be more OnlyFans than there was before, but that had always been there. Like, it's not like before Elon took over, OnlyFans had stayed away from Twitter. They had a very good working relationship, and there was so much other content on Twitter, and Twitter had moderation in a way that made it so that you weren't catching that stuff if you didn't want to. Like, there were ways to say, don't show me this anymore, and guess what? You never saw it anymore. Unlike nowadays, where it seems like all somebody has to do is pay to get through all of your blocks. But there's this idea that like that stuff was always there, but with other shit being there to kind of water it down, it didn't seem to hurt so much. It didn't seem to affect you so much. But now, when it's the only thing left there, it's all anybody can talk about.
Yeah. And also, you see it, right? I'm not a subscriber, and I don't blame anybody who is a subscriber, right? You do what you do with your money. But it does seem like the more OnlyFans stuff that I see now is sort of desperation, everything must go marketing to try to draw people to these accounts now.
I don't know. As a frequent user of Reddit, I've seen that kind of OnlyFans marketing for a few years, but maybe that's just where that's always been. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, there is definitely less of a market in terms of nobody's just sitting around on their phones all day. At least not as many people are sitting around on their phones all day, for sure.
Right.
There's definitely part of it that is that. Like I said, the OnlyFans stuff to me is just a symptom of a larger issue, and that's that we are all now living in the age where everybody has to have a second thing, right? Everybody has to have that side hustle that is getting them the fun money to do the things that they want to be doing, because they're lucky enough if their main job is even getting them enough to keep a roof over their head, right? And so like digging on like OnlyFans and the people that use it, which is not something that I'm saying you're doing, Dev, by the way. I hope that's clear. But the ways in which people seem to be approaching this story about this actress taking to OnlyFans, the more and more that I read, by the way, from her, it seems like she's very okay with the choice that she made. So
exactly.
We're gonna go with that. Yeah, like
that's it. I don't want to shame her in any way, shape, or form. That is not where my intent is. My intent is more, why is this news?
Yeah, no, and I think that's what it comes down to, is we're talking about an older generation that just still doesn't understand that this is how it is for us. This side hustle culture that exists for us and younger just doesn't exist for them, and they just don't understand it. They don't get it. Yeah, their neighbor might have a side hustle where they like make wooden bowls because they've always loved making them, and they realize they had 100, so why not sell a few at the farmer's market? But like that's what they think of when you say things like, I do this on the side. That's what they think you're talking about. What they don't realize is what you mean is you run a whole other second business out of your garage that actually takes up just as much time as your regular work does, and lo and behold, you're not sleeping anymore, right? Like, and you develop some type of terrible coke habit to keep yourself going or some shit. Like they just don't. There's this lack of understanding that is what most people our age and younger have to do nowadays in order to just like make ends meet.
Yeah. And again, if that's what they're trying to cite, if that's what they were writing, it'd be a different type of thing. But like, it's also this weird, like, man, OnlyFans is out there if you need a couple extra dollars. Or also the vilification of like, I can't believe she's doing this, where like it is just the reality for some people. It's not an honest conversation about it. So I'm glad that we were able to come here to Tito Report Studios and have an honest conversation about it. Right? I think OnlyFans is far safer than I remember. God, like 2014, back in the couch days, having conversations with people like, oh yeah, I'm considering selling used underwear on Craigslist.
Yep,
And
the
it's
Craigslist
like,
hookup. I was about to say, this is definitely an improvement from the Craigslist hookup for sure.
yeah, like this is, at least there's some separation between you and the person, and there's a platform, and you think that there's going to be a modicum of security that comes with that so that they cannot find you, the person who is watching you. Right? I mean,
Yeah, and there's, not that everybody is as well educated in this as they should be, but there is information available. There's much more information available nowadays about keeping yourself safe online. Things like making sure that you're taking pictures in vague rooms. You've only got gray backgrounds behind you so that people can't like pick out like a street sign and figure out where you live in the background of your picture.
yeah.
Right?
Yes,
Like
all of those scary things that we have to do.
But like that nuance that we've learned about online interactions, because it was never going to go away, we had to learn how to do it right, essentially, right? And we are not close to doing it completely perfect yet. We're not close, but we know more than we used to, right?
Right, and that, on some level, even if you have to live with the beast, you should at least know like the ways to tame it every once in a while, or the ways to safely cohabitate with it. Is not perfect, but we are taking those steps to do it. And I don't know. It was just, I couldn't believe it was everywhere, them talking about this. And I don't know, there seemed like there were some other big things going on. Like it seemed more like the distraction than the actual news, but it was interesting enough to me as somebody who like has been aware of it to discuss why is it now important to make others aware of it. So I thank you, Sejohn, for indulging me on this one.
No, I mean, it actually kind of goes hand in hand with something that I got kind of deep into this week is just with content creators and the way that things are kind of shifting in that landscape. Because as you said, like the money is starting to kind of move around a little bit more than people were ready for, right?
Yep.
That even some of the biggest creators on Twitch and YouTube have really had to kind of start not reinventing themselves, but like part of it, like one of the symptoms of it is we're seeing a lot of people leaving, right? We haven't really talked about that, but the quote unquote mass exodus of YouTube creators, which is ridiculous because I think I can really only think of like a handful, but they are some of the bigwigs, right? You have a lot of people that are making big moves like Rhett and Link, who put out a joke video about leaving YouTube, but really what it was them talking about how they were going to start shifting more of their focus onto their non-mythical creations. Essentially, they're going to be working on like a TV project for something that's not going to be under the Mythical Morning banner, which is huge for them because like that is a whole company that they kind of have to create. They have to be certain types of content creators for that whole world because there's a whole business under them that now depends on that, right? They've got employees that need them to still crank out certain types of content and bring in certain types of revenue and fans and all that. So they have felt kind of stuck in what they've been able to do with that and trying to break out and using some of the studio system and using some of their prestige, as you have pointed out, is not really working right now, right? Because there's so much shifting money about like what's going on with content creation. So they've just decided that straight up, they're just basically going to keep using YouTube, the thing that they know how to use, and just kind of put their own money into it and just see what can happen, completely separate from the Good Mythical Morning stuff, which is like these are two of the guys that have been on YouTube for 15 years now, and them kind of making this decision to do something independent for themselves is a wild move. And then there's guys that, like I said, we were seeing certain people just straight up leave. Tom Scott, Matt Pat, there was a few other ones that came out over the last couple of months. But the big one for me this week, what I've really found myself kind of diving into, is the new formats that a lot of these guys are starting to kind of use, specifically like the game show format. It's really interesting, Dev, because as far as Twitch goes, you've actually talked to us a lot over the last few years about different ways that people have used like the game show format to do streaming, right? You even participated.
I've been participating on a couple of them.
Well, more and more creators I'm finding are really kind of dipping their toe in that the ways in which they're kind of presenting, like, there's I came across some stuff where there was like a D&D like trivia game that was like behind a whole bunch of really like higher production, I won't say high production, but higher production stuff of like everybody there is in costumes and they're on a set and they're like, and there's like buzzing in and stuff like that. Like it's a honest to God, like good old fashioned game show. It's just got like a D&D like cover to it. Or there's another one that is done by the Mogul guys. I've talked about Ludwig before. He was the one that was wrapped up in all of the Nintendo Smash Brothers tournament stuff, right? He's gone in a direction where he's had a Jeopardy style game for a while now, and then just this week presented a new Taskmaster style game that he hosts. That he hosts first on Twitch, and they do like a live hosting of the game. But then what they do is they then take that content and rip it and turn it into YouTube content after. So they're able to double dip on that content, as they should be. That's the just like TV shows can go into syndication. There's no reason why, if you're a content creator, you should be tied to one platform with your stuff if you could be making money on other platforms. Yeah. But like the ways in which they've like really kind of leaned into this, and they're across the board. There's actually in the Mogul camp, there's a guy called Jay Schlatt. Anybody out there that is into that group knows who I'm talking about. He's a huge YouTuber, and he had a big blow up on Twitch a couple of years ago because he nixed tens of thousands, like he banned tens of thousands of users from his stuff. Because for anybody that doesn't know, the big history of the Mogul guys, Ludwig included, they're the ones that kind of started calling out Dream, the Minecraft speedrunner that we now know was cheating on a lot of his stuff. Like, they were one of the first ones to really dig into that. And because of that, they were also then getting slammed in their subscriptions and users that were a bunch of people kind of, disingenuously subbing to their stuff so that they could kind of fuck their shit up. And so one day, this dude, Jay Schlatt, just decided he was just going to just run a program. He had a developer on their team create a program for Twitch that would just go through, and anybody that ever, in his words, stanned Minecraft was just going to get permabanned from his community. And then sat there, and for like 5 minutes, you just watch this program run. He shows it on screen, just banning person after person after person after person. And he famously, after that, his subscribership went up. He banned tens of thousands of users from his subscriber list, and the next day he had more subscribers than he had the day before. People like were just like loved that he had done that and jumped on that shit. That's his kind of persona, right? Like, that's the kind of guy that he is. He's that lovable asshole that does that kind of shit. Like, that's how he sells himself. So in that, he has created this like panel show style character where he goes around to all of these YouTube game shows now. And there's like, if you YouTube right now, Jay Schlatt ruined my show, you'll get 4 or 5 different YouTube game shows from the last year in which he comes on and he's just a dick on set. Like, that's like the bit, right? And like this is the kind of like atmosphere that's like developing on YouTube over the last year. Is we're moving more and more and more away from some of the more like talking head content that you see, and we're getting into this more like kind of produced content. In a lot of ways, I think that MatPat was kind of ahead of the curve, because he did his whole video game show 10 years ago, where like they set up an actual pizza parlor and had people come in and play Five Nights at Freddy's, or they set up like an actual parkour course and had people do Mirror's Edge style parkour, right, for points and things like that. Like, it would fit it right in with this kind of shit now, with like people that are just spending thousands, if not millions of dollars, because some of these guys like Mr. Beast have these millions of dollars to spend on this stuff, and they're producing like weekly game show content to bring people in. And like, that's not the only move that YouTubers are making in order to stay relevant. Twitch creators are using to stay relevant, but like, it's one of the bigger ones that I've noted over the last week, is how many more like panel show, game show styles things are out there with like just YouTube personalities as your guys. There's a big pot of creators out there that are looking to make content right now. Like you said, they're not sure where the money's going to come from anymore, so they're jumping in on these panel show style game shows all over Twitch and YouTube.
And game shows historically are cheaper to produce than like in the realms of reality TV show. If it's a game show, it's cheaper to produce, which is just crazy, and people love them. There's always a market for people who want to watch game shows. It's why, like, when the 2007 writer's strike happened, we had all of these game shows emerge. And I'd say that a bunch of them emerged with the latest writer's strike, but there were just too many game shows already. The summer landscape, so that they can still make money and sell advertising spots, is all game shows, right?
Yeah.
Pyramid is back. Holy moly, that like weird mashup of Wipeout and miniature golf. Wipeout is back and only on the Turner networks. Card Sharks. Remember Card Sharks, Sejohn?
Yeah, man.
The whammy game. What the hell is that? Pressure Luck. Like, they're all back.
Luck, yeah.
Supermarket Sweep was back briefly. Like, game shows are where you go. So the fact that it has gone from TV to the internet content is not that surprising. But
and right now we're in that Wild West era, which we always find with these new genres, right?
Yeah.
Where because they're online, because they're not tied to anything in particular, they're kind of free form, right? So for instance, the Taskmaster one I was talking about that started, it's called Unpaid Interns, starts on Twitch, and it runs as long as it needs to for them to get through the content. So the first episode is like an hour and 35 minutes long. And then like the next episode is like an hour and 27 minutes long. Like it just goes as long as it needs to. There is advertising built in, which is really interesting. It's one of those things where I have YouTube Premium. I think I've talked about that before. So I don't ever truly see the terrible ad experience that I know YouTube is, but I just don't experience that because of the premium subscription. But that didn't like this had full format commercials baked into it. Like that wasn't YouTube. That was this show was how they do it, right? But also like even when it's not a commercial, he has moments where the host like breaks into a Red Bull and like shows it to the camera and like winks, like that kind of shit happens. So there's also just a lot of that sort of stuff being tied into it too, and things which again gives them kind of that freedom to play with the format because they don't have to break to commercial for the quote unquote commercial. They can do it just right there live on stream, which is what they've always been expected to do anyway.
Right.
There's been some weird stuff in that regard too, by the way. Did you hear about how YouTube changed up their impressions? Was it YouTube or was it Apple? Somebody changed up their impression like measurement system, and it's fucking a whole bunch of people up right now because they sold contracts to like say I'm a YouTuber and I go to Red Bull and I say to them like I can guarantee you 10,000 impressions within the year, and then they sign a year contract, and then you owe them those 10,000 impressions. And an impression just means that at some point I will talk about your product into the camera. YouTube rules will state that I have to say this is an ad, but this is the ad, and people will spend more money on that impression happening in the first 5 minutes, or that impression happening first out of 3 if they're going to be in a chunk of impressions. They want to be the first one mentioned out of the whole group, that sort of thing. The way that those rules were changed up, I think it might have been Apple that changed the way that they are changing the ways people view stuff. Oh, that's what it was. Apple changed their auto download stuff.
Yes.
And when with that, those were getting read as false impressions, because for anybody that's not in the Apple ecosystem, Apple would auto download your podcasts for you, and in that they count as a download for the larger thing, right? Except that if it auto downloads and you don't listen for a few weeks, you could have 3 or 4 episodes that you're being counted as a downloader for, even though you never listened, right? So when advertisers are using those numbers in order to pay money, saying, well, you get an average of 1,000 downloads a week, here's money for 1,000 downloads. But now Apple's going to start reporting what's actually listened to. That's going to change those numbers. Somebody might be saying I'm getting 1,000 downloads a week, but if only 100 people are actually listening to it, or how far into the episode are they listening? Yeah, I'll pay for these impressions, but you better believe they're going to be in the first like 20 minutes of your show, because you don't have anybody listening after your first ad breaks, right? Like that kind of stuff. Like it's going to change the way that those creators are paid now. It's just to show how some of the money is shifting, right? Is like this is leading to these then content creators having to think of ways to keep people around longer into the episode. When do they place the ads? How do they get into the ads? Do they lean into the ads as just like, we're going to go to break now, here are the ads? Or do they work them in casually to their conversations? where they still have to say, like I said, YouTube makes them still have to point out, like, hashtag ad, like this is an ad. Like they still have to do that. But if they're deft enough to do that and still keep the flow of the conversation going, right, then it never breaks. And then you definitely have listeners continue through, as opposed to that moment where you break for ad, you kind of give them that permission to stop listening, right? Or stop watching the video.
Or fast forward. I do that a bunch. If I don't care about this ad. Some of the ads I don't like. I'll just have it on in the background. But if they're selling me, I'm sick of Factor. I'm sorry, Factor. If I can skip to where I know, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, there's just so much that's just shifting in the landscape right now for streamers. Podcasting, streaming, what all of these guys do.
Content creation.
They're
really.
all it's all up in the air now, we had talked about this idea that we got very complacent with certain things during COVID that just weren't going to keep happening once the world came back, right? That we always knew that was going to happen, and we always knew we were going to have this moment where we had to figure this shit out. It's just really interesting watching it play out right now. Watching the streaming guys that I've been watching for years. Some of them straight up just not anymore. Like I mentioned the MatPat stuff. He's retiring this week. I think that this coming Saturday he's going to be officially retired from Game Theory after 15 years on YouTube. And like, there's people out there making full-on videos about the ways in which he changed YouTube. There are people out there saying good riddance videos. There are people out there putting, there's content creation literally being born out of this content creator leaving. Like it's
right, because
the atmosphere is wild.
And also, you have to follow what is relevant right now. If you're a content creator and you don't do something about MatPat leaving, even if it's not what you talk about, right? And it's weird to say this because we don't really talk about MatPat that much on the show, but it's one of those things where, like, you're missing out on a chance to be relevant and get eyes and ears and views on your content by weighing in on it. It's literally what I have seen with Madam Web over the last couple of weeks, is people who, like, don't ever talk about movies have done a Madam Web episode. And it's like, oh, okay, because it's one of those situations where you have to track what is being talked about and what is bringing in viewers or what people want to see. Yeah. So it is, the whole landscape. We try to, this is me talking to you. I don't care if you listen to the show. I thank everybody who does listen to this show, but we're not making any money off of this show, right? I have no intention of making money whenever I sit down to record an episode of this Tito Report, and that's kind of freeing because we can do what we do.
We've never been in a situation where we've had to consider any of this stuff, right? It's been really interesting watching all of this stuff happening because we are so disconnected from it, right? We have this kind of position, privileged or otherwise, however you want to look at it, where we don't have to participate in that particular ecosystem, as it were, to just reuse a phrase from earlier. But we don't have to be a part of that game, right? We don't have to play that game, and so we just get to kind of commentate on it from the sidelines, and it's wild to watch. Guys that I totally respect and understand why they have to make these decisions.
Oh yeah.
Like watching them just literally mug to the camera and pitch cans of energy drinks to me. It's weird how normal that has become for me.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
Remember when Chuck had to do the whole Subway thing, and it was huge? Everybody out there was ragging on Chuck for all of the times that, inexplicably in the middle of, a serious conversation, somebody would hold up a fucking sandwich and take a bite because they had to get that Subway sandwich with the wrapper facing out, on camera. And it was, offensive to people. That's just par for the course nowadays in all content, right?
I so badly want to talk about the new Canadian show I've been watching that is created in association with the CW. I'm going to hold off because once I have 4 episodes of Tracker for next week, they'll weirdly tie in nicely to one another. Is the trailer, teaser, promo that I'm going to pitch right now. But Canadian television in the 2000s, in terms of that ad break you were talking about for Chuck, is insane. A show that I enjoyed, being Erica, where a woman starts doing therapy and the therapist is literally able to bring her back in time, quantum leap style, to relive those moments. and then like maybe change it and then see how it would have affected her, and like you still wouldn't be happy. By the third season of that show, they would pause the show to do ad reads. And like not radio, subtly, like weirdly, like, oh yeah, this is my new Ford Fiesta. Look at how much leg room there is. And it's like 5 to 7 minutes of them talking about a character's new car because the episode is sponsored by that car. I remember there's one where they're like, oh, come have a cup of tea. It's Teely's tea. They have all these great flavors. This one is good for right now, but we need to be creative. But afterwards, I'll make sure to have a cup of this one to calm me down and get ready for bed.
Is it the New Girls Brooklyn Nine-Nine crossover episode with the really weird moment where they start talking about like the Toyota? Like I seem to remember it being with Zooey Deschanel and Andy Samberg because she hits him with the car and then has to like drive him to work. And there's like a moment I might be misremembering, but somewhere in the Brooklyn Nine-Nine New Girl verse, there's this moment where they start talking about the Toyota vehicle that they're in for just like 2 minutes. They're just like, yeah, Toyota, great.
Yeah,
right?
Toyota.
Like,
maybe it was started. It was one of the car companies that definitely sponsored it because she's driving it with Schmidt and she's like, this rental is really nice. And then when she almost hits Jake with the car, Zooey Deschanel goes, it's a crossover. So that whole thing, but it's also like they were trying to sell the new Toyota crossover vehicle. That was
like it's done well enough that it's funny in the moment, but it's funny because they acknowledge what an ad it is. They're not hiding that it's an ad, right?
It is not being Erica being like, okay, here's 5 minutes where we're going to literally try to sell you a product. We've completely divorced from everything else that's going on. Enjoy. It's like, and it's funny to watch them in retrospect because, like, you know now that no money is being made off of that unless you go out and buy the product. But at the time, I'm just like, this is very awkward. And it's just the way that marketing works, I guess. Phew. Is there anything else you want to talk about this week, Sejohn? Anything? I think I've hit everything. Like, I really was going to, like, touch on the tractor stuff, but now that we're getting longer, I'm happy to wait for one more episode and then talk about this exceedingly weird thing that happened with the shows I personally watched over the last couple of weeks and the fact that they were all derivative of one particular actor's body of work. Is for more promoing. But is there anything else that you want to talk about? Because I think I've said a lot of my piece on this.
I'm pretty good. That we did have the price info drop for Paper Mario. Did I misinterpret that?
No, I did. I wasn't aware of that. So where's that? How much is Paper Mario?
We're looking at a $70, $60, $70 price. Maybe I that might not be correct. We'll have to look into that. But some information about Paper Mario came out and riled some feathers. Just some people, just the usual like, oh, they're gonna make us pay full price for the same game again, that kind of stuff. And then the inevitable, Nintendo does this all the time. Except Metroid Prime was pretty good. Except Super Mario RPG was pretty good. Except so then it becomes this whole thing of like, okay, well, if you're gonna admit that you actually don't mind them doing it, then stop. Like, I hate that Nintendo does this, except when they did it all of these times and it worked. It's like, okay.
But Metroid Prime was $40. Like, that's the thing.
Metroid Prime was $40. Yeah, that's true.
So that's
it's an interesting conversation to have. But that's why we should go and get the price on it. But there was some pricing information that dropped for Paper Mario, and it definitely rubbed some people the wrong way this week. But we'll report more on that as we get closer. Because the other thing is that like I don't really. I have an issue having that conversation before you even play the game is the other thing too, Yeah. But we'll talk more about it next week.
I don't disagree. The big thing for me, I got tickets to Frozen Empire. So Ghostbusters, that's going to happen when that comes out. But that also comes out the same day as Princess Peach Showtime. And a lot of people, so happy 7th anniversary of the Nintendo Switch. Because literally I went to go see Logan and then came home and played with my Nintendo Switch. I didn't have Breath of the Wild yet, but I had Spectre of Torment, the third semi-spin-off of the Shovel Knight game. God, what a weird time it was 7 years ago. Which also this show was just entering its second month. So another weird thing to talk about. But everybody is kind of like bidding their fond farewells to the Nintendo Switch. They feel like this is the swan song year. And I think that comes from, there was a lot of things saying that the Switch 2 is going to either be revealed or released in 2024. And now it seems like that has been pushed out to 2025. And a lot of people are talking about how the Switch doesn't have anything coming out this year.
You know, they keep every fucking year. There's this moment where everybody talks about how the Switch has nothing on its docket, and then Nintendo does a Nintendo Direct and drops knowledge of like 10 games coming out.
But it also feels weird for them to say like Nintendo's got nothing coming out. We're like, a new Princess Peach game is coming out at the end of this month. Mm-hmm. Like, you can be upset about the fact that Mario vs. Donkey Kong, which I will promise to have 100% completed the next time I'm sitting in this chair recording for an episode of the Say Report. I had a blast with that game, but I understand why people were like kind of on this Game Boy Advance game that kind of got a graphical like glow up. I get where people were maybe disappointed with that, but Princess Peach Showtime, it's a brand new game, and like for a well-established character, I don't know why people aren't more excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, like, we don't even know much about, like, play style or anything, because it's not like it's in any type of, like, vein that we've seen before. It's not like it's it's not giving me any type of, like, major RPG vibes, but there might be RPG elements. I'm excited. I'm super excited because, like, Nintendo dipping their toes into a new style of game is always fun to watch. Even if it doesn't succeed, it's still cool to see them, like, try weird shit. And we've talked about that before. They always have their weird ones that they try, and sometimes those hit and become their biggest franchises.
Right.
So I hope this is
and we do know about
something big for Peach.
And we know about the transformations. Like, that's been the big sell, is that she'll get to dress in 10 costumes, and each of them will give her a new sort of play style or power set. So it kind of feels like a weird continuation of the Wario Land games to me. Like, that's what I'm comparing it to closest. And that's
this suit gives her fart power.
Well, she's not going to have fart power, but she's going to have 2 different sword powers, and she'll be a cowgirl with a gun, right? I don't know.
Yeah,
it's an interesting thing. But then when people are like, Nintendo's got nothing happening, it's like, you could say outside of the Princess Peach game releasing at the end of this month, Nintendo doesn't really have anything exciting on the docket. It's just
they're because all they're looking at is what's to come. It's that thing, that anticipation that we've built into all of the marketing bullshit, where if you don't have 3 more games announced, nobody cares about the game coming out this week. It sucks.
Yeah. And it's just been disappointing. So I am very excited for that, but you're not wrong. It's been a weird time for the Nintendo Switch. Just a little bit. So more on that as it emerges too. And we will have more information about the 1,000-Year Door release. I don't know if I'd pay $70 for it. I have to be honest with you. As somebody who got all the way to the 1,000-Year Door and then didn't finish the game, who was very excited to play this game again, I don't know if $70 for a remake.
Well, it might not be 70. It could be the 60, because they're doing that thing where they're kind of they're teetering between 60 and 70 for their full price games, depending on, right. Breath of the Wild was 70, but Mario RPG was only 60, right?
Yeah, Breath of the Wild was the only 70 that they've released so far, right? As far as I can remember.
Was 70?
Oh, I don't know. We'll have to look at that. We'll have some Nintendo numbers for you next week.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so if that's good for you, let's send this one off to Will and have a good one.
Yeah, man.
All right, cool. So one more thing for me is the fact that I need new headphones. We started recording late today because my headphones broke. So if you listen to this episode, please remind me to buy new headphones. That would be very helpful from you, the listeners. Also, the Discord is in full swing. We just had 2 new people request entry into our Discord. So, come on down, join the Discord. But if that still doesn't work, you can get in touch with us via email, thesayreport@gmail.com. Is the easiest way to request access to our Discord. Or also, if you just want to send something to us, the old-fashioned email-y way, that still works. Just make sure you mark in the subject line if it's for Devon or Sejohn. But with that, without anything further to say, William, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, We'll see you next time.